Hello everyone, this is Sean Sagan for the second part of my video series in how to make a reed in the new Italian style. So in this part of the section of reed making, we're going to be addressing how to get the tube to not look so oval and weird looking. And also we will be talking about sort of forming the tube, since that is not something that we did in our last video. So if we remember, this reed has been drying off of a drying rack for quite some time. And we do that in order to make sure that the tube of the reed doesn't develop any cracks that will go up into the blade of the reed. So as you can see here, the blade of the reed is quite nice, doesn't have any cracks on it. So let's talk about what to do for this next section. A couple of tools that we are going to be using is going to be my mandrel, my reed mandrel. This is just my standard Andante and Rondo reed mandrel. You can see it has this nice line right here, which we will get to in just a second. A pair of pliers. They're not really brand specific, but as you can see, mine has this nice hole right here, which we will be making good use of. And finally, a ruler, which we will be using the millimeters side. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this reed, we're going to tighten this bottom wire and get the wire in place. So I am going to put this on my mandrel, going to kind of wiggle it down all the way to that line. The one thing you want to watch out for, since the wires are relatively loose, you know, this guy can move around, you know, just a little bit, not much. But since the wires are loose, I don't want to make sure my blades are not going to be slipping. So I really don't want to be turning too much. As you can see, I put gentle pressure on the sides of the tube and kind of wiggled its way in. But after checking and seeing how it looks quite nice, the next thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to take my ruler. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the bottom of the reed tube to the bottom of the wire here. I find that this is the easiest way to measure. If you have, I'm sure that there's other ways of measuring from the bottom of the reed to the top of the wire, or whatever have you, but what I do is I line it up and I am looking for 6 millimeters. And I am just going to, as I kind of navigate this groove, going to go up to about that 6 millimeter mark, make sure it's nice and even. And now I'm going to take my pliers, I'm going to pull, I'm going to relax. Remember, we never pull and turn at the same time, but I pulled, and now I will turn and tighten my wire. I'm going to make sure I get all the slack out of that reed. Now, with that reed, these pliers having that nice hole in them, we're going to make sure that we are crimping our reed onto our mandrel so that the inner dimensions are matching the mandrel. And that's the important thing with the mandrel, is that the mandrel is going to dictate the inner dimension that we have. So now that I've done that, I don't really need all of this wire. I like these style of pliers because it leaves a really nice distance in order to trim off some excess wire. We can take that out of frame. And now we have our last wire placed. Now, you may notice if I take off and reinsert my reed that this tube is now sitting further up on my mandrel. So what I am going to do is I'm actually going to use an additional tool. I can just use this right now, or I can just go ahead and wrap this reed if I want. But what I found in my experimentation is if I use the cane density, this is not a, it doesn't have any, I didn't do any density testing on this one because this is Barton cane. But if I did some cane density and found out the density of this cane, I would do this process of reaming out the reed and making sure that things are, I'm adding structure into the tube right here by reaming it out and making the tube a little bit more round each time. You know, just kind of getting a general feel for this. It feels a little bit on the softer side, so I'm going to go on ahead and do this. And this shape, I believe, was a Rieger 2, so I do want a little bit more structure. So because I see that this reed is sitting a little bit higher on this mandrel, it's a good couple of millimeters, I'm going to go on ahead and remount some of the internal of the reed. So you can see right now, if I make sure that my mandrel doesn't roll away, but you can see right now it's quite nice and round. We're just going to cause this to be a little bit more structurally sound. So this is my Andante and Rondo reamer. It is so important, and I'm not I love the Andante and Rondo tools. I understand sometimes they can be a little bit difficult to get, but the big thing I'm stressing here is making sure that your reamer matches the same taper as your mandrel. It is so incredibly important to make sure that these two tools match. So there are other brands that where if you're using a Rieger mandrel that you can use a different brand that may ream differently or have a different build quality. But in my experience, having matching tools and having them make sure that they all correspond to each other is so incredibly important. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to take my reamer, I'm going to insert it, I'm going to push down. You can see I don't really want to push down all the way. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn, and I'm going to keep the reed as stable as possible. I'm not pushing as I turn, I'm just letting the tools do all the work. So you can see a good fair bit of material came out, and you can see now that we are getting down to that bottom line, almost to the bottom line, just a little bit peeking out. One thing I'm seeing too is that when I do this too, the tube tends to relax a little bit. You may see that sometimes the tube kind of bulges or kind of goes in and out on the wire because that wire is so tight. I always like to make sure that my tubes look quite relaxed when I do this. So I'm going to repeat that process one more time. And I think that's all that this reed really needs. And one thing I noticed too, if you aren't doing density testing, just in my own experience, if you find that you're overly tightening and that you're starting to get really pronounced indentation around this wire, that might be an indication that you're just doing a little bit too much. So you can see here, it's just kind of nice and snug, maybe just a wee bit over tight. I'm going to go on ahead and crimp again, make sure it is conformed to that, the internals. So there's that, and you can see here, nice tube. And now I take it out and go out again. And you can see it's moved a little bit, but not nearly as much. So at this point, I'm going to leave the reed. I think it is at a point where I'm going to start getting diminishing returns, and really if I keep doing this process, it's just going to have adverse effects in that I'm going to be over tightening this wire, and it's not really going to be doing much to support the reed. So in the next video, what we'll do is we'll go on ahead and wrap. I will show how I wrap. If you find this video helpful, please make sure, or if you have any questions about the style of New Italian style, please feel free to reach out. And I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. So I hope you all found this video helpful.